This is Eastmans Elevated podcast. I have on great guests that are really knowledgeable, consistently successful. We're able to dive deep down the rabbit holes of these different subject matters of shooting, of physical fitness, of mental toughness and drive. All the different skills that make up a complete hunter that you can become.
Here's your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Got a brand new Eastmans Elevated for you. So this week on the podcast, I have back on my friend Sean Curran. So Sean is one of my buddies there from Hawaii, and we start out the conversation talking about the Maui fires and just the where we can donate, how we can help, what's going on with them, the reasons why they happen. So I wanted to get into that. He gave me a good site to be able to donate, and that's the People's Fund of Maui. That's the one put on by Oprah and The Rock that both have property there on Maui. He said it's a good fund. His wife's parents, they were able to get accepted into that fund. He said it's a great place and just puts money in the people's pockets to be able to pay their bills and get through this tough time. So you guys can donate there. And then we get into elk hunting. And my buddy Sean is such a good bow hunter. He gets so much experience out on Maui with the axis deer, mouflon sheep, and things of that nature. And then he's been traveling to the States hunting Western game for probably like the last 15, 20 years. And he's highly successful with his bow in his hands. He's killed some great bulls. And so we talk about this year's elk hunt, lessons that he learned, things that he could do different. It's a great, authentic conversation that I really enjoyed with one of my good friends. So we'll get right into that podcast. Just want to thank my sponsors for today's show. So I have a new sponsor, Element. Element is spelled L-M-N-T. It's science-backed hydration. So you add these packets that help with hydration into your water. It's got great flavors, great taste, and just does an amazing job at hydration, getting you the sodium you need. There's no added sugars to this, so it's super healthy. And hydration, it's so important, especially under this high exertion that we do hunting out west, hunting in the heat. I use it for a lot of like extreme running. So for these longer races, which I'm looking in this next year to do some longer races, I use it. It's just an amazing product. And so, couldn't be more proud to have these guys on board with the podcast. And there's just so much science-backed information about this hydration and how much it helps you. So just going to talk a couple talking points here. You know, it's like steady energy. Those electrolytes really help improve cognitive function. So think clearly, make better decisions, suffer fewer headaches, less muscle cramps. You just perform better. It supports fasting. It's just, I really notice a difference keeping hydrated, and that water will really run through me in high exertion and high heat. So you guys can check them out. It's Element. It's spelled L-M-N-T. We have a landing page with a free gift. So this landing page, it's the only way to get the free gift. So you get it with an order, and then they'll give you a sample pack with all the packets. So far, I've really been liking the raspberry is the one I've been using, but they also have citrus, watermelon, and I'm getting into trying all these as well. So let me give you guys the landing page for the podcast. It's going to be drinkelement.com/elevated. So Drink Element, which is LMNT.com/elevated. We'll get you that free gift. So thanks to those guys for their support of the podcast. I really appreciate it and believe it's a great product. I also want to thank Matthews Archery. Oh man, am I stoked. Today is 11/14 as I'm getting this podcast out, and today is the launch day of the new Matthews bow, the new lift. I couldn't be more excited. Mine showed up last night. I got it in that desert tan color, 70 pound. I'm 26.5 inch draw length. So I'll be starting to set this thing up tonight. I am so pumped with this bow. So they redesigned the riser of this bow. So they've been using the same riser for the last 3 years. It's redesigned this year, and I haven't shot it yet, but I've been such a fan of Matthews and that Phase 4 last year. So I talked to Dan Picard, which has already killed a good whitetail with his, but I talked to him about it, and so he was saying that it has the same low vibration, same shot, feels like a Matthews bow, just as quiet as last year's Phase 4, but they're getting more performance out of this bow. So they're getting about 10 more feet per second out of this bow. And talking with Dan, he tests all these bows, like all the top name brands, and he always gets the best performance out of these Matthews. I mean, these things just hold a tune. It's been what I've trusted for all my bow hunting the last 7 years, 8 years, or however long I've been using Matthews. And I'm such a huge fan every single year, the new bow they come out with. So the Phase 4 has been the best bow that I've ever shot, and there's no doubt about it that this lift is going to be incredible. So if you're interested, pick one up, go shoot one, go get a feel for it. So stoked on this bow. I'll be starting to set mine up, and I'll keep you guys updated on how it's shooting for me. But so excited, man! Awesome bow. Over at Eastmans, we're cruising along. Make sure to check out my other podcast with Dan Picard. It's Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal. It's on a different feed. We've been putting out some really good episodes there. We have a new one that's a question and answer that comes out, I believe, next week. So thanks a bunch for your guys' questions. It made for a great podcast. So really excited to release that one to you guys. And check out the other podcasts. Ike's got his podcast, Eastman's Hunting Journal, on there, and everything else we do. The Huntsman with Jim Huntsman, that's a great podcast. I've been a guest on there. In fact, need to get him on Eastman's Elevated. Maybe I'll reach out to him. Just a diehard elk hunter and great guy, so you can check out that as well. And check out our Beyond the Grids. We had a new episode come out with Ike Eastman. He was bow hunting and then finished up with a rifle in there in Wyoming. Great episode. I've got those couple episodes from last season and just gathering up all my footage to turn in for this year. So I'm down to my last hunt of the season. So I have one more late season hunt here I'm going to do. I'm going to go this weekend for a quick 3-dayer. Come back to work for a week, and then go for an extended trip. In fact, I'm going to meet my Hawaii buddies out there. And get this, so Sean's on the podcast, and talking about elk hunting. We were going to meet up for this deer hunt, which I think we still are for a couple days or whatever. But Utah Division of Wildlife called him about a week ago and said, "Hey, Sean, this guy turned back in his premium tag. Do you want this tag to hunt in 2 weeks?" So he ended up taking the tag. He's hunting one of the best units in Utah for one of their late season hunts. Couldn't be more stoked for him. So we'll see what he turns up there. So his elk hunting is not done after this podcast. He's still got another hunt he's going to go on. So super stoked for that guy. It's just great. So yeah, let's get into this podcast. Again, that element, if you're interested in it, go check it out. Just science-backed hydration, and we have that landing code. You got to put in drinkelement.com/elevated to get that. And couldn't be more stoked to have him as a sponsor on there. So check that out. Sean Curran, I'm your host, Brian Barney. Eastman's Elevated. Here we go. Well, right on, man. Yeah, good to get you on the line. Good to talk to you. Yeah, you look a little bit different with the hair, but same attitude, I'm sure.
Yeah, my wife couldn't stand my hair, but I tell everybody else that she loved it.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, man, you're looking good.
Thanks,
well, yeah,
bro.
just checking in, man. How are the people in Maui doing after the fires, dude? I was so worried about you and Jay and Rob, and then your family and friends. How's everybody recovering?
Yeah, thanks, man. It's gonna be a long road to recovery for sure. It was so devastating, what happened out there, and kind of all over the island. Almost kind of like a wake up call. You know what I mean? That basically, I don't know if a better system needs to be formulated when natural disasters like that occur. More water in the area is huge. If Lahaina is such an arid place. It used to be the capital of Hawaii back in the day, and is because of its rich water resources that they had. And throughout, I don't know, the last 100 years or so, how a lot of the private companies started diverting our water, and that causes a lot of arid conditions in areas where there used to be real lush environments, or streams that were flowing, real green, climatized areas. And since it was so dry, man, that fire people's yards were dry. Everything was pretty crispy, and nobody could have really predicted how strong that wind was going to be, right? They were claiming it was going to be 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts, because we had a hurricane pass just south of us. But it was quite a bit south of us, I believe like 400 miles or so south of us. So, but what ended up happening was the wind hit the island, and then it ramped up over the West Maui's, and then it just ignited as it came down. It ramped up to 80 to 100 mile an hour gusts. And nobody could ever predicted, or nobody did predict that it was going to be that crazy. And a lot of our power lines were, probably, old and needed to be replaced, or, they fell down and they caused sparks. And before you know it, the fire started in Lahaina. And then as soon as one house got hit, it just went down the chain. And it just a unbelievably horrific thing that happened over there. So, our hearts really go out to the people out there in the community, and it's going to be a long road to recovery, but, it's a very strong community out there. And I know that, everybody on Maui, will all pull through, and it'll unify us stronger than ever. You know what I mean? To help out. I guess one of the big topics right now is trying to find longer term places for the displaced people to live, right? That lost their homes and stuff. Because prices of homes have skyrocketed so high, rents skyrocketed so high, and there's already a very limited resource of places to live before the fire, and now you've got thousands of people that need places to live, and they're just not around. So hopefully the state can step in, and I don't know if they can build some homes for these people to live in until their homes get rebuilt or what. But what made Lahaina so special was the people out there in the community, and hopefully we can keep them here on the island and not have them leave. That's kind of our main concern right now, is keeping them here, because it's such a special place. I mean, you've been there. We take the ferry over to Lanai, and you've cruised Front Street, and yeah, man, it's a special place for sure. So.
Man, what a bummer. Yeah, it's like such a perfect storm of being so dry, and like private entities taking the water away, and then the winds off that hurricane and coming over top that mountain, and then also the infrastructure of those power lines that poles that need to be replaced and things. And it sounds like there was a few mistakes along the way. But yeah, I mean, I love your outlook on it, that, you guys are going to be stronger because of it. And, man, some of the actions from you people helping, other people out there. And Lahaina had fires. There was also other fires across the island too, right? Like, man, I saw people trying to protect their homes, and, people chipping in, and like, man, you guys really pulled together to get through that. And it was horrific, but, yeah, it was good to see like all you guys trying to help out and help everybody get through it that were displaced or had issues. And yeah, some people lost their lives, which was just wild, man. It just happened all of a sudden. It's something that nobody expected out there. At least I didn't expect, or none of us guys in the States thought would happen.
Yeah, nobody could have predicted it, really. It's super unfortunate. But we want to spread the word that, as far as the west side, it's not really available for tourism right now, but the rest of Maui is, you know what I mean? South side, Wailea, Kihei, everybody that's been to Maui kind of knows all the other places you can come and visit. Right now is actually a really good time to come. There's not many people here. It's beautiful. Weather's been great. Hey, bring your bow, come back. We've actually got some opportunities too. I wanted to touch on that. If people are looking to access deer hunt out here, we've got a Feed the Hunger program that we implemented, and we've been targeting these areas that are kind of archery only, because a lot of our deer have been getting pushed into archery only areas. So we've been hitting those places quite a bit lately. And if anybody wants to come out, they can reach out to me on my Instagram at Missions Hawaii. And if access deer is something on their bucket list right now, is a good time to come hit that up. And all the meat gets donated, to the people of Lahaina, and then the community on Maui. 100%, all the meat goes to the community over here. It's a good thing. So if you want to come help out with that, there's just a small fee that we charge that just helps fund the operations. And you can come out and shoot access deer till you're blue in the face. All right.
At least try. That is the key words. No, that is so awesome, Sean. Like, you guys have worked so hard to put this nonprofit together and to be able to secure some of the best hunting spots out there, and then to really take care of the people that allow permission on. So, man, with your guys' spots and the access hunting, like, I'd imagine they'd probably be hunting a lot of the same spots that I hunt when I come out there with you, and it's just absolutely insane action, man. You guys have some crazy axis hunting, and you've been doing it for your whole life. Like, you've got such a good read and feel on the country, on the deer, in the terrain as well. So, man, you couldn't go with a better guy. In fact, I gave a guy your number just like a day or two ago that was headed out in February and asking about hunting hogs or hunting axis deer. So hopefully he got a hold of you. But yeah, what a great opportunity for people to come out to Hawaii and come experience axis deer hunting, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's a blast. Yeah. And we're only offering archery only right now. Possibly some rifle spots later on, but anybody that wants to take a crack at it with the bow, come on over. It's a ton of fun.
Oh, dude, it is. It's one of the hunts that you can really sharpen your skills because the axes are so switched on. And then with the spots you have, I would imagine it's 100% opportunity hunt. Like, you are going to get chances to stalk axis. You are going to see axis. You're probably even going to miss some if you're anything like me. Those things are so tricky and tough out there. But yeah, you couldn't plan a better, funner hunt. And what a way to like improve your bow hunting skill set is to go out there and get those, I always talk about those high opportunity hunts, and those axis deer are perfect for that.
Yeah. They teach you everything, what you can and can't get away with real quick. So
they sure do. And some great bucks on the property too, and I'm sure a good opportunity for doe hunting. And then it's just an inexpensive trip when they just pay a small fee to you, and then they're a hunting license in Hawaii, and the logistics are fairly easy when you've got the property lined up.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, Maui is mostly private. So, I do get hit up a lot, asking about, some kind of public grounds over here. And we really don't have it, unfortunately. We do have some areas where, they're really pretty areas. But hold on one sec, Brian. Sorry.
Yep. No worries.
Sorry, my alarm went off.
Yeah, no biggie. That just means it's a real podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, so our public grounds, they just kind of lack animals and definitely lack deer. If the deer pop out in our public areas, they're getting shot. So there's not very many of them at all. A lot of them get pushed into these private areas. But it's fun. You can't ask for a funner hunt. It has been getting expensive as far as the outfitting costs go, but we give a really good deal because we're hired to take numbers down. So we're not out there just trying to shoot big bucks here. We're out there, unlimited does, spikes, and you can get one good trophy buck. So yeah, that's kind of what we offer. Yeah.
Dude, it's the best deal going. Yeah, it's take him up on it, reach out to his Instagram, and go hunt with these guys. They got some great property and some great access deer hunting. So yeah, thanks so much, Sean. I'm so glad that you offered this on the podcast that we can put it out to people. So you're probably going to have to be spending your time answering messages now. But yeah, hopefully you get some of these guys out and get them some good bow action. But I want to get into your elk hunt and hear more about that. So let's connect on your elk hunt and finish the conversation.
And over the top, it magnified like almost double on the downdraft on the other side of the mountain. So it ramped up to like 80 to 100 miles an hour wind.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it caught a lot of the, the officials or whoever was in charge of like our electrical and power lines and all that, caught them off guard. You know what I mean? Because the winds ramped up so fast. It wasn't like it was just, 40 to 50 to 60 over, hours. It literally ramped up in like 20, 30, 40 minutes. It started blowing 100, and then it just started leveling power lines and causing a lot of the fires all over the island, really.
Oh man. How's family and friends and locals doing? Yeah,
I mean, it's just going to be a long road to recovery. Everybody's still grieving over it. It's going to be a long rebuilding process, and we're just hoping that the people in charge can kind of let the locals grieve and take the time that they need to recover from this, and not try to rush the tourism back. Now, don't get me wrong, like we need the tourism on the island, so like 3/4 of the island's open. No problem, come over and enjoy Hawaii. It's actually a good time right now. There's not many people here, but the west side of the island is pretty much off limits, and it should be because of what happened, and until people can kind of get into a longer term living solution, right? People need to find somewhere to live long term. Yeah, it's gonna be tough on the west side. Yeah, for sure.
Brutal. What's the best way that we can help, or like organizations that are trusted over there? What can we do back here in the States?
I mean, see, I'm not too up to date on it. Of course, I was elk hunting the last couple of weeks, so I'm not sure what's happened in the last couple of weeks over here. But as far as I mean, cash is kind of king. If whoever lost everything can get some sort of income or some sort of stability in their bank accounts would really help. You know what I mean?
Taylor, do a little research and then shoot it over to me. Like if somebody has a GoFundMe or something I can donate to, and something I can like post in the intro or ending. I just love to help. It's just tough to know which organizations, which aren't predatory or taking advantage of the situation, and to actually give the locals the money that they need. So yeah, I think that's good advice for sure.
Yeah, like the best to me is definitely donating it straight to the people that were affected, rather than who knows where the money goes in a lot of these other organizations. So I know there's like an Instagram that has like the 2,000 people's Venmos or whatever. And you can kind of just pick a family, and, there's descriptions about them, and you can read through it and be like, hey, this family could use some support right now, or whatever the case. But there's a lot of them like that. It's I know like The Rock and Oprah, I know Oprah took a while to figure out where she was going to donate her money. And then she realized that it needed to go to the people and directly to the people. So she came up with a solution where she teamed up with The Rock and I'm sure some other celebrities, and you can apply for it. And I think they're giving out like $1,000 a month to these people and families that need it. And I don't know how long that's going to last, but hey, you know what I mean? That's huge right there because it's going directly to them. You know, it's so things like that I think are most important right now. You know, yeah. It's talk about, man. It's
I'm sure you're tired of thinking about it and talking about it, but yeah, it's good to like hear the story directly from you and what's going on out there. So yeah, man, just felt for all of you guys. That wind was brutal, and then the smoke off those fires, and then no rain. Yeah, you guys are just getting pounded out there. It'd be nice to have a little relief, a little rain in the forecast would sure help.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, dude, you're just coming off an elk hunt.
Yeah. Oh man, I've pretty much came up with the conclusion that we need more September. Can't we have like 2 or 3 September? They fly by so fast.
Oh, dude, I'm never working another September as long as I live. It's just the best month to go chase bulls. It's so action packed, isn't it?
Yeah, I've hunted a lot of animals all around the world and the States, and it's my favorite. And I don't know, Brian, I could kind of see it rubbing off on you a little bit. I don't know if elk's taking over the mule deer spot or not, but I noticed that you've been pretty into it lately as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, always into it. It's where I cut my teeth for sure. It's tough for me to pick a favorite, but when it comes to September, my favorite is definitely elk. I forget about those mule deer for 1 month a year, at least September and October. But yeah, dude, it's like the absolute best, most thrilling hunting there is. Like, how could you not love it? So yeah, it's pretty action packed, man. Just love chasing those things around. They're so difficult and challenging too. Those big bulls, man, they just challenge you to your core.
Yeah, they I pretty much have come to a realization that elk hunting is a lot of close calls. Because there's just so many close calls in elk hunting that, oh my God, it like, for instance, there were 6 of us hunting this last trip. We had tags in Idaho, and 1 out of 6 of us got a bull. But everybody almost every day was coming back to base camp, you know, that night or whatever, and talking about the close calls they had. And it, you know, 10 days straight. So you're talking 10 times, that's 60 close calls almost every day. You know what I mean? At least 4 or 5 out of the 6 guys had close calls with bulls. I mean, it's just, but, you know, couldn't get arrows off. They're almost like axis deer, man. I feel like they're always moving. Mm-hmm. They're always moving. You know, another huge part of it for us this year was the wind. The wind was extremely challenging. You know, sometimes those downhill thermals in the evening would kick on perfectly for that last hour and a half in the evening. But then there was times where you're playing those downhill thermals waiting, you know, to make that approach into that bull that you've been sitting on waiting for the evening play, and the thermals never came through. And you know, you're creeping in, waiting any minute for those thermals to start cutting in your face, and then they don't. And then what happens? The bulls come in, or the elk, and they smell you, and then it's back to the drawing board, right?
Oh man, those winds are so fickle in the mountains. Like, not only thermals and the directionals, but the topography and the way it hits through there, the sunlight, the shade, the timber, the open, there's so many variables to that wind in the mountains that it is like one of the toughest things or the biggest challenge to dial in. It seems like all our plays are based upon that wind, and still even then there's just no guarantees. Like you say, usually that last little evening play is like the most consistent winds, but then some days you get weather that comes in and it's doing the exact opposite, which is crazy.
Yeah, I did notice that. So if you've got like a front moving in with some rain or snow or whatever, a lot of the times that will keep that dominant wind throughout the evening. It won't allow the thermals to kind of do their thing. I'm still having a tough time trying to figure it all out, because then you would think, the next day, the ground's a lot colder and cooler. So that should keep the thermals kind of doing their thing for a little bit longer. And some days it was the opposite. I couldn't make sense of it, man. It was like,
well,
you do your best.
Dude,
you basically go a wind checker in 1 10-day hunt, just puffing that thing all over the place. Make sure you've got
100%.
dust in the wind checker. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, dust in the wind checker. I also like that milkweed that floats in the air where you can kind of see it float off. Like that stuff's clutch too. But yeah, and out of you 6 guys too, you guys are all really good bow hunters and really good elk hunters as well. Like you've had a streak going of good bulls. You killed a giant killed a bull the year before. Like you've gone quite a few years killing bulls. So yeah, it was it's just definitely just like such a high degree of difficulty every year you go out and try to kill one. It's like this ultimate challenge to try to arrow a mature bull, So yeah, wild that you guys had so many close calls and not as many dead bulls. But when the wind's swirling, it's like that's what you get, you get a lot of close calls. And those bulls have such a knack, don't they, for like stopping with the one tree in the way, stopping on the other side of the cows. You need them to take one more step. You need them to hold still for 2 more seconds. Like, how many of those scenarios can a guy have before it finally goes right?
Seriously. Yeah. Man, is it a game of chess? It really is with those mature bulls. The unit we were hunting, there wasn't many cows. So it was kind of nice because, you got these bulls with, God, some of them are with 1 cow or 2. Very rarely did we see big herds of cows with the herd bulls. But even when they're with those 1 or 2 and they're just, chasing them in circles, even trying to creep into that. Like here's a pretty funny story. It was on, I think, our second to last day, our last evening hunt. And I'm sitting on this knob and I'm watching Janus go in on this good bull. I mean, he was a really good bull, maybe a 320 class bull or whatever to try and put it into perspective. And so we put the bull to bed. We went back in that evening. Janus came from the top, and I was on the bottom on this knob, kind of watching it all play out. Just in case he came down, I would intercept him, and he was on the top. But the bull was kind of going up and over the top in the evenings. So it played into Janus's hands perfectly, and he's stalking in through the timber, and he's got this bull at like 40 yards, and he's closing the distance. And he looks out the corner of his eye, and there's this grouse staring right at him. And he's like, "Don't you do it. You better not. Don't you dare do it." Right? And him and this grouse have this stare down for like 10 minutes. And this bull's just running in circles with this single cow, this hot cow, comes out into the opening, and Janus is just about to draw back. And there goes the grouse. And the bull and the cow look over, and they just knew. You know what I mean? Usually if a grouse flies away, it's because something's around. And they ended up boogieing out of there. But I mean, just that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, I didn't see a grouse all freaking day. And it's just like, another one, he Janus got on another good herd bull 20 yards, peeks over the mountain. The herd bull's right on the other side. Bugles, scares the shit out of him because he didn't know they were right on the other side of the hump. And draws back, pops up, and he's just settling his pin on the bull. And his cows end up pushing down below him and get his wind and bolt out of there and take the bull right before he shoots. I mean, just like close call after close call, and on good bulls too. It's yeah. I mean, I don't know.
They'll break your heart, won't they? Man, oh man.
Crazy. Yeah.
And they use that movement as like a defense too. Like they're constantly moving. Like sometimes you just can't get a clear shot because they won't stop in a lane, or they won't stop for a shot, or the moment you draw back and go to shoot, then they go to chasing the cow again or whatever, you know. And then just to catch up to them is such a challenge. Like they can just roll country so well that, you know, you have a bull in a perfect spot with a cow or a couple cows, and you start moving to that spot. But by the time you get there, they're somewhere else. Like it's right. Like this game of like, you get close and then you have to readapt to the scenario you're giving, and get close and then readapt to try to get into range. So yeah, it's not like you can see one and make this calculated, methodical play because they're never there when you get there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's I guess kind of like you always say, you know, when to know when to back out. You know, rather than blowing the situation up and then having to start over again on finding elk. If it's just not in your favor, if the wind's getting a little squirrely, if it's getting past that 8 a.m., 8:30 mark, play the evening game. And it sucks, I ain't gonna lie. Like you're literally twiddling your thumbs for 6 hours during the day, you know, 400 yards away from where this bull went into, and you're just waiting. I mean, a couple of times I just curled up in a little ball and was trying to sleep in the freezing cold.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, it's just, like it's such a long wait. And 6 hours, that's a short wait. Sometimes it's like 8 or 10 hours. You're just sitting there just waiting for it to turn back on. But you sure have to put all that focus in that morning and night. It's all you have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's the most effective. I mean, I've talked to Remy quite a bit about elk hunting, and he's got a completely different theory. He likes to go in that 10 to 2 o'clock time frame. Now, I don't know if it's an area that's got a big congregation of elk, like there's a lot of elk in maybe a smaller area or something, I would say, hey, play the spot and stalk game. You know what I mean? It's kind of like access deer hunting, right? You blow out a herd, you know you're going to get on another herd. And, you know, I know he likes the bugle. So if he gets one that's down to play, you know, then he'll play that game with the calls and stuff. I'm kind of like you, Brian. I don't necessarily like to call. I like to maybe in the evening time, if at night when I have nothing going on and I want to try to find a play because I've got no morning play or anything like that, then I'll throw out some nighttime locator bugles. And then it's like, hey, there we go. We got a morning play now. If you can't do that, then it's just, you know, going up to the vantage points and getting up there at the crack of light and glass in the area. But yeah, Remy likes to hunt that 10 to 2. Of course, he's one of the best elk hunters in the world. So he kind of knows how to play that game a little better. But I think it's the best play, like you've always said, is that morning and evening. You know, we basically would locate some elk in an evening. They'd come out into the spot. You know, we'd look at our watches, 6:20 p.m. Okay, they just popped out of the timber. Okay, so we'd go up, or actually we'd let them be. We'd go up in the morning. If the play wasn't right, we'd back out. And then we're like, hey, remember they popped out at 6:20 the night before. So that afternoon, we'd start making our way up there around 4 o'clock, get set up. Usually, I think the best play for us is we'd have one guy sit back at a vantage point and glass for the other guy. And if you got cell reception, you're like, hey, perfect. You know, hey, the elk just popped out at the same spot or whatever. That really helps out a ton. Yeah, so that was kind of a big part into getting on elk was, and they, man, if you're not pressing them, a lot of it's like clockwork. Sure enough, that very next evening, 6:20, 6:22, 2 minutes later, popping out of the timber in the same spot. You know, I'm going up in on them, and I get on this herd bull. He's with 2 spikes, a satellite bull, and like 4 cows. And I'm creeping up the the side of this spine, and he comes out on this bench, and he's doing his thing, and I'm kind of cutting through the timber on the right-hand side of his spine going up. And I can't see the bull, but I can see like some of the spikes and stuff. And then I finally get up on top of the bench, and I'm in position, and I can see the bull's rack over the hill. And like, there he is about 100 yards away, and he's just rutting and going crazy, figure eighting his cows. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to, you know, hopefully one of them, you know, comes into our my shooting lane, and it's open. The bench is pretty open. And sure enough, here he comes on a dead bolt to me, pushing a spike, right? And he pushes a spike right underneath me, okay? The spike comes to a dead stop, puts his nose up, wins me. The bull's looking at the spike, knows that spike is winding something it doesn't like, even though that bull wants to like annihilate that spike. You know what I mean? The bull turns, looks at me, and I'm like right in front of a tree, pins me. He's at 50 yards broadside. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And the whole thing just blew up because he blew a spike right underneath me and got my, you know what I mean? Just like, so many close calls. But, you know, that playing that whole morning evening game is why, you know, we even got into that position. I think if you go in there during the midday and you're not a really good caller or a really good spot and stalker, or there's just too much things that could go wrong, I think, during the midday play going into their bed, that you'll have more opportunities if you kind of play that morning and evening game. Yeah.
Yeah, and we all have to build our own style of elk hunting, and yeah, like you say, that you can't argue with Remy's results. He killed another stud of a bull this year, and so he likes that 10-2. You know, I just find that in these high pressure areas where we get tags, that these elk are just not active middle of the day. Now, maybe it's not a pressure deal, maybe it's a habitat deal, but I also find that they disappear in that deadfall, nasty, thick timber in there where it's really tough to sneak up on a herd of elk or multiple eyes in there, where I end up busting them more than I end up getting close to them. And so trailing into that thick stuff isn't advantageous for me. And then, you know, at least where I'm hunting, like, unless it's a real special day, that those bugles, they shut off at, you know, sometimes as early as 8 o'clock, 8:30, sometimes it's 9:30, 10 o'clock. But once they shut off, they're just not making that noise in the middle of the day. And so for me, yeah, it's like making the most out of those mornings and evenings. And so much headlamp work this year, where I'd leave the truck at 4:30 or 5 in the morning to get to these good drainages when the lights came on. So I was into the elk, and like, I was on a great bull. Like, I was in this drainage that was full of elk, like full of 2 herd bulls. There was, you know, 4 or 5 satellites. There's so many elk in here. I got in, chased them in the morning, almost had a play at them, working them, and they disappear into that thicker timber. Bugles start to shut off, and it's like, okay, I'm not chasing them in there. Winds are starting to switch around. So I just sat there, and like, then about 10:30, I hear a couple cow calls, and it's just that classic setup of somebody like, you know, a couple cow calls. I'm like, man, is that a human? Hear a couple more, and then I hear a bugle, and so I start glassing up on the ridge, and then I spot the hunters. And they had left their truck at daybreak, and then they had got to that drainage at 10:30. So here they're sitting above the best elk drainage in the whole mountain range right now, but they don't know that there's an elk in there because those elk don't respond to them, and they kept hiking and went out of there. And then I hunted that evening and had an insane hunt in the evening. So for me, it's just like that morning and night is so important. And also you mentioned the night, like listening for bugles, like that's key too. That's how I killed my bulls. I found them the night before, cruising down. It was the one day where I didn't hear a bugle. I didn't see an elk on my hunt. There was some fresh sign, but driving down to where I was going to camp, I just listened in all these spots, and then, heard a bull. And just like you said, then I had a play for the morning and then ended up killing that bull. But for me, yeah, it's just what works. But I think we all need to build our own styles. And Dan Baccar said the same thing to me today, that he likes to hunt all day long and kills a lot of his bulls in between 10 and 2. I'm like, man, I don't know how you do it. I don't think I've ever killed a bull in between 10 and 2.
Yeah. I think you might be onto something with maybe less pressured areas. I think, it seems like Dan, he horsebacks in pretty far. I don't know how much pressure is in on those areas. Maybe there is quite a bit, maybe there isn't, but I think you're onto something there. Less pressured areas definitely probably helps for midday stalks. More pressured areas, man, those elk, they run such a tight program that I like when they let their guard down in the evening.
Yeah.
And
Dan said it to me today too. He was saying, and he works really hard to find those backcountry wilderness spots in Wyoming that he can hunt these low pressure elk. And he said, things just come together easier back there. They call easier. They'll wait a couple more seconds on the shot. He's like, it just comes together easier back there because he's just coming off an Idaho hunt where he battled away for a bunch of days and had close calls. And he's like, man, it's like almost hunting a different species when you're hunting those high pressure elk versus those low pressure elk. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're all kind of spot on. They act a bit different when you're in those places they don't get pressured. And I probably need to pull a page out of his book and like hunt some more of those backcountry spots that I used to get to. And not that I'm not hunting backcountry now or backpacking spots, but I used to hunt a lot more remote spots. The trouble with those spots is like it takes 2-3 days to hike in there. You have to commit so much time. And if the elk aren't there, it's like tough to relocate. But when you do find them, you might have a better chance at killing them. So I just need to mix and match some more of that, like into these higher pressure zones that I'm hunting too. Just something that I took away from this season.
Yeah. And having camp on your back. Yeah. And kind of just staying with them. Yeah. That'd be super productive, I bet. And but then, I don't know how you do it, man. You're a beast, but man, when I'm 4 or 5 miles back there and there's an elk at the bottom of this drainage just going off, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get this bull out of here if I shoot this bull? Like, I mean, I don't know, man. There was some times this past hunt that I basically passed on where these elk were because they were just in this drainage that would have killed me trying to pack that thing out. You know what I mean? It's just not, I don't know. It's not, I might sound like a pussy or whatever. I don't care. But you know what I mean? I also don't want to risk, the meat spoiling or anything like that. Right. Because we all know that. I mean, I don't know. It got cold a couple of days, but most of the days it was in the 60s. Almost in the 60s to 70s during the daytime. So I don't know if you hang that in a tree for more than a day, if that's going to spoil. I would imagine it'd probably get a little bad,
Yeah, and a little bad is gone bad. No, it's just being a responsible hunter, man. It's like, and that's part of the challenge. As much as I love to hunt elk, it's like something you have to consider when you're hunting them. The same thing as hunting moose. You killed that giant moose a couple years ago. Like, you have to put limitations when you got to carry that thing out on your back, and it isn't feasible to kill one. Like, dude, I do the math. Like, if I kill one 10 miles back, I'm 10 miles out on the first load, 10 miles back in, 10 miles out. Like, by the time I get all said and done, there's 60, 70, 80 miles in there. And like you say, that's only if the weather's good and it's getting down to freezing at night where the meat's going to keep. If it's not going to keep for more than a day and spoils, well, then I'm super irresponsible. Like, I've just made the largest mistake bow hunting that I can make, to kill some animal that I can't get out of country. So I do think it's being responsible for sure. Like some of the places where you can hunt, like you have to put limitations on yourself with elk, where with mule deer, you don't have to when they're a one load, one trip out. Same thing with moose, man. It's like, you can only kill them a mile from the river, a mile from the road, or maybe 2, 3 at most, but you start killing them further back than that. And you're definitely going to lose meat.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, And then I always wondered too about game bags, Brian. So, there's all sorts of game bags on the market, and you have some game bags that are highly breathable. And then you've got some bags that aren't that breathable, right? So, if it's cold, then that's fine with the ones that aren't as breathable. But if it's not cold, you really need those game bags that are more breathable, if you're hanging them in a tree or whatever. And you're mostly running game bags. Like, we noticed there's quite a bit of flies, because I did end up getting a bull, and I'll tell you about it later on. But, the flies came around pretty quick. So if you don't have them in gang bags, I would imagine, those flies are going to start tainting the meat, laying their eggs and all that sort of deal. So you got to be careful on what game bags you choose, for the climate that you're hunting, depending upon how quick you can get that meat out and on ice or in some kind of cold climate.
100%. Well, and you know more about that than anybody. They're on Hawaii. Like, you can't leave that meat. Like, everything goes bad in Hawaii in a matter of minutes, not hours. It seems like, whether it's fish or meat or whatever it is. But you guys have the ultimate meat care to take care of those axes and get them on ice, chilled down, get them butchered. Like, it's probably one of the most challenging places to hunt just because of meat care over there.
Yeah, definitely. You use a lot of ice over here, big Yeti coolers. We noticed that, you can let them hang for like an hour or so, maybe hunt a little bit, but then, I think you have about a 2-hour window in Hawaii to get that meat on some ice. And then of course, it always helps if you cool the meat down. Like I know hunting with Remy a lot. He always does this. He always lays his meat like on a log or hangs it or something like that before he even puts it in his game bags, and that's to get a lot of that excess heat off of the meat. And then which really helps too. Like if you put that meat straight in your bag, and if it's not that breathable of a bag, or like you put it straight in your backpack, it traps in all that heat. And if you've got an hour or two hike back to the truck, then it could cause some problems. So meat care is kind of a huge part of it. So like when I'm, deep 5 miles back in some basin, and I know it's going to take my buddies, a half a day to reach me, to pack out this bull, I just want to make sure that everything's going to be done right. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not just shooting a bull to shoot a bull. I'm not out there to just kill a bull. I'm out there to also, take the responsibilities of getting that meat back.
100%. No, that's it, man. It sounds like you guys had some warmer temps. We were a little bit cooler around here. Of course, the day I killed my bull, I don't think it got up to 50 degrees that day, which is always kind of nice when you're self-butchering and packing. I did have Dan help me for like the last load there, which was nice. But it was a cooler day, which always makes a difference. But it's something you really got to consider killing elk. There's so much work to get out of country, and there's so much work even when you have friends. But then if you're by yourself, oh my gosh, it's even tougher yet, butchering those things and getting them flipped over and getting them taken care of and hung up. I do like your tip too about the game bags and laying that meat out, because when you kill that animal, it's 98 degrees or whatever, that temperature, and then you start butchering. But if you don't lay out that meat and give it a chance to cool, you get it in that bag that maybe isn't breathable, or it just seems like you get a bunch of meat in a bag, then within that meat, just because it's such a mass of meat then that you need to cool down. When they're separate parts of meat and you lay them out, you can get like a pretty decent chill. And you think even if it's 60 degrees out or 70 degrees, that's still a lot cooler than 98 when you kill them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that heat trapped in those bags that aren't that breathable.
Yep.
Brian, do you mostly pack out your bulls quartered, or do you debone them?
Debone them.
Debone them, yeah. Yes. I made that mistake last year when I killed that pretty good bull. We quartered it and packed it out. And man, that bones and stuff like that were quite. Hold on one sec. Sorry, my alarm went off for my kids. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Hold on one sec. My alarms are gonna go off to pick up my kids from school.
Yeah. Do whatever you got to do.
Let me turn all that off real quick.
Mm-hmm. You got a ride for the kids?
Yep.
Okay, good deal.
One sec. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. It is a riot being immersed in elk hunting and elk country, though, isn't it? Like, even when you're curled up in a ball and you got the whole middle of the day, at first it kind of seems weird. Like, you want to be productive in the middle of the day, and we have all these responsibilities, and we're trying to get shit done. And it's like you get to elk hunting, and then you're just sitting around for 6-8 hours in the mountains and watching ants crawl around on the pine needles and stuff. But oh my gosh, once you get in the rhythm of the elk woods and you're hunting them and morning and night and kind of sleep deprived and going hard and big miles and elevation, so much fun, man.
Yeah, it is nice. Like, I came into this season just, with some friends, and I knew we were going to have a fun hunt. It was more open terrain, which I was pretty excited to try out, because usually the elk hunting that I've done most of my life, I've done 8 elk hunts to this date, and been successful on 5 of them. But the first couple of years was super tough. I mean, it was real thick country. Just trying to find an elk was really hard to even get a play on. But and then it was nice changing it up and doing some more open terrain. It reminded me a lot of like what you do and how you glass from like the roads, and you glass you glass into the mountain range, with some heavy optics, some high powered optics, and then find them in that morning, evening time. And then, you have a play for vice versa. But so that was cool, playing that game instead of kind of just having to go off of bugles. Thicker terrain, you got to have them calling. Like, if you don't have them calling in that thick stuff, good luck trying to find them, right? Needle in a haystack. But that open stuff, you got some good optics, man. And like you said, getting to a vantage point, leaving an hour in the dark and getting to a good peak, good ridge that overlooks just a ton of country. And, you're picking up multiple elk popping out at different places, and then you get a little bit of higher powered magnification on them, and you're like, hey, that's a good bull I want to go after. Or no, that's a small bull on over there, whatever. So it is good to have some sort of high powered optic. What we were using, Brian, was that new SIG 20 by image stabilizing binos.
Mm-hmm.
Man, unbelievable. What a game changer.
Nice.
Like, Anus picked up a pair, so you didn't have to carry a tripod. You didn't have to carry a big heavy spotter. You've literally got these 20 by 40 SIGs that weigh what my 12 by binos weigh. They're lightweight, they're super lightweight. So Janus was running those full time, and I was running the 12 bys. And every time we'd glass up elk, if they're kind of a little bit tough for me to see in my 12s, I was like, hey, let me see your 20s. You know what I mean? And I'd flip that switch and it was just like you could tell exactly if it was a good bull or not. So God, man, what a game changer those things were. Crazy.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I've been running them this season in my pack as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's always that instance where you can't see quite what you want, but like 95% of the time, those 20s will show you everything you need to see, whether it's a big shooter or not. So it is a game changer, and we must cut about 5 pounds out of our pack with that deal.
Exactly. And that's huge, spike camping out and stuff like that. Yeah, like you said, you might not be able to see that bull, how good he is 5 miles away, but you can see how good he is 2.5 to 3 miles away,
Mm-hmm.
seem like.
100%.
And that's good for me.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, getting to those ridges, like you said, in the dark and being up there for that first light, because you don't know if these elk are going to make their way into that thick timber a half an hour after light, an hour after light. Like you said, those guys came up to that ridge around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and those elk were already in the thick timber. They had no idea. So yeah, that's a huge part, is finding those vantage points that you can really see a lot of country and get a good surveillance of what's in the area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you said you'd be able to spot them from far, like you mentioned some pretty big distances. Were you able to glass them from like the valley floor way up in the mountains and then see some elk in there and then go, okay, that's a place we need to get up into, and then get a closer look and get a look at those elk? Were you able to locate them like that far away?
Yeah, a couple of times we'd be in the valley glassing up into the mountains, and then we'd see them coming out either morning or evening. We do that play. And then a couple of times we would hike in the dark up to these vantage points and then sit on those for the early morning hours, and then glass.
It's better, isn't it? Being up in the mountains.
Yeah, you get a little closer. You know what I mean? You can definitely see them a lot better. They don't look like ants.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can just pick apart the folds a little bit better, and you just don't see them all when you're looking from afar. It seems like when you get up in there, you can hear them. Then you can see more of those folds. You can see them cross some smaller parks and things. So you're just almost better to just commit and get into country, into a spot. But every once in a while you get a free morning or a free evening. It's like, oh, let's just glass and try to find some that we'll have for tomorrow. But yeah, I'm with you. I think a lot of times it's better just to commit and get into country.
Yeah. And then, if you can glass them up from far, then you're like, hey, I like to kind of put camp on my back, go up there for the evening, try to, like you said, get closer to them, see what's going on. Maybe you can get a play that evening. If not, you've got your camp set up. You're there, you post up. That next morning, they're still right there in that same area, and you can just play the game a lot better than if you have to hike in and out every single day. You know what I mean?
100%, man. We put so many miles on when you're trying to hike in and out, and that lightweight camp for an overnight or for a 2-dayer, man, is that the way to go? Yeah, you just throw everything you need for a day or two, and then you make the effort to get in there, and then you've got a couple hunts, and you also don't feel as rushed as when you hike in for just an evening hunt and make this huge climb in, and you've got to hike out that night. You almost feel pressured to make a play where you can almost be trying to force something at times.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah, trying to force it because, you know what I mean, you're losing light, or you're like, oh man, I got to hike all the way back in here the next morning. That definitely runs through your head a little bit. You're like, geez, I just wish I had my sleeping bag with me right now, just post up. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So
100%.
Getting back so I did have a play on, I think it was day 7. Let's jump back a couple days. So I think that play I had on that spike was like day 2. Janus had a good play day 1. And then it wasn't until about day 4, day 5. We were spike camped back in some elk. We made some good plays, just couldn't capitalize. and we kind of just stayed up in the mountain for a couple nights. And then we had this one growler, and we know he was a big bull because you could just hear it in his voice. And he'd come down to this river, one of these little side rivers, right? That was up one of these drainages way back in there. And he'd come down to this river. And so it was our last night spiking, that afternoon. So we went down into the river for him. And sure enough, he comes and another bull comes into play. And now we got two bulls. I don't think there's no better play than when you have two bulls going off, right? Because you literally, one just gets the other one so fired up that they're just both going off. And if they're talking, you can cut the distance pretty quick and get into them pretty fast. So this evening, we're heading back to base camp in that direction. And the big bull, is there, and he's battling off with this other bull. And we have to kind of make our way down this kind of rocky shale slope. And they're down on this bench. And the rocky shale is loud, right? And I mean, we're just trying to tippy toe down this stuff. And it's still loud, but we made our way down into that bench without being heard or seen. And we got onto that bench and we're creeping through the timber. And, they're piping off every 5 minutes. So it's like we know exactly where to go. And we get within about that 100-yard mark of this herd bull in the thick timber. Now, we can't see him. We could see some of his cows about 50 yards away or so. And we start really slowing up our pace, right? To where it's like we're taking a step every couple steps every minute, you know what I mean? Because you just never know what's going to happen. And Janus was about 20, 30 yards in front of me. And I kind of played the back game because you never know where they're going to come out at. They can circle around, come out by me. They can, even though he's in front and we know he's closer, you just never know. So we're both prepared. And all of a sudden, that big bull pushes that other bull right to Janus, right? And I mean, on a dead sprint, that other bull goes and stops 20 yards from Janus and looks right up at him and then bolts. Like, basically, and Janus was set up perfectly kind of on the side of a tree, but that other bull picked Janus off. I don't know if Janus moved a little bit or what that bull saw, but he took off. He ran. You know what's crazy, Brian, is that he didn't bark. He didn't do anything. He just got chased away by a bigger bull, and he was a good 6x, and he just ran away and took the whole herd with him. It's crazy that they know, like, he didn't bark. The big bull chased him away. Big bull turns around, goes back to his cows. That bull sees Janus, runs away, and takes the herd with him. How does the herd know that bull seen Janus? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's
They're reading body language like it's verbal language for us. They can just read his mannerisms and know he's spooked and know he's seen something, and they're switched on enough to be able to realize it. But that's so crazy, dude. That other bull could chase that bull, so he's obviously spooked running away. And then they can tell the difference between that and when he sees Janus and then he's running from Janus and to take that whole herd. That's absolutely nuts, isn't it?
Yeah. I was thinking, whatever about that bull. We'll get back on the big one. Next thing we know, the big one's, 1.5 miles down into the river bottom over by our base camp. And funny story was my other buddy that was with his fiance, she had a tag. And they ended up getting on that big bull that we were after. And they were just like, they got to 60. And I think she was effective out to about 40 or so. And he was out in the open meadow down by the river bottom going crazy. And they were like, holy cow, he was a big bull. Big, big, big bull. we're this close, you know what I mean? And then he just blows that other bull right to Janus, and the whole thing blows up on us. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. Just that whole stock going down in on them while they're just going off is probably what grabs me the most in elk hunting. You know what I mean? Getting in between two bulls going crazy, man. I don't think you can beat it. I think that's the best.
You're right. I think that competition, that multiple bulls like that, and especially when you get two herd bulls or two mature bulls, it's like the most fired up they can get. And it seems like that's when you hear the most bugles. It's like one bull with his cows, yeah, he may order them around, or cows come into estrus and they rut and they bugle. But what really starts those rut fests is that competition like that, trying to keep those satellite bulls out. And then when you can get two herd bulls that are back and forth, it just seems like they go nuts. They can't stand it, man. And it is some of the most exciting hunting. Like, I can think I'm tired or worn out, and I think, I'm sure you guys did a pile of miles too, but we were at the 40 or 50 mile range, in like a handful of days, and you think you're just worn out. You don't come back in there and you're checking one more ridge, and then you hear a bugle, and it's all of a sudden you don't feel fatigued at all. You feel like you could run up that mountain. You feel like you'll do whatever it takes. Like, those bugles, they sure have a way to like kick you in the butt and motivate you. It's like you can be dog tired and think, I don't even know how I'm going to get out of here. You just feel like you don't want to be hiking anymore, and you hear a bugle and your ears perk up, and pretty soon you're ready to go run up the mountain again. It's like whatever it takes. But yeah, it sure is exciting hunting.
Super exciting. Yeah, and I mean, calling one in yourself and bugling and playing the game with them that way is pretty badass too. I just like when there's another bull involved doing all the work for you.
For sure. You guys able to call some in while you were there?
I didn't call very much. And okay, so let's get to my story. So it's day 7. And, we're ready to take that intermission, right? Go back to town, go shower, go get a burger or something like that. It's day 7. It's the last day. But we glassed up some elk the evening before. And we went back in there that next morning, me and Janus. And we get up to the ridge, and 400 yards across in the sage, right where we put them to bed, they're right there. Right, going off in the sage, a herd bull with about 8 or 10 cows or so. Say, okay, he's still there. So we drop down into the saddle, we hook around the timber line, and there's a spine that kind of comes down that separates kind of a broken timber face with an open sage face, and they're in the open sage face. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to come from the broken timber face, peek over this little spine that kind of separates the two, right? And they should pretty much be in bow range, 50 to 60 yards away. So we start cutting through the timber, and I'm just about to and I'm down in the river bottom, about to come up into that broken timbered country. And, it's only 100 yards away from where I need to get to. And I look up, and there's a raghorn and 2 spikes on that side of the face. And I'm like, great. Okay. Now we can't go with that plan. So we back out, and we keep an eye on this raghorn and these 2 spikes, and they bed down. And I'm like, oh my God. All right. So we stay back. The wind was blowing down, up, and in our face. The only direction it wasn't blowing was towards that side. You know what I mean? So we would have had good wind if we went to that side. So we basically just sit down, and we kind of took turns. Like, I took a nap for a couple hours while Janus watched the spike and a raghorn. And then when I got up, I kept eyes on them. And then finally, what ended up happening was another bull came up the river drainage below. And by this time, it's 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right? We've been there since the crack of light. And this other bull started making the herd bull go crazy. And so the spikes and the raghorn crested over that spine and went back towards the herd. And I was like, Janus, if you want to go after that bull in the river bottom, go after that bull. You know what I mean? And I'll, start making my play up here to go after the herd bull. And he's like, okay, sounds good. So he circles back, and he goes after that bull in the drainage. Well, what ended up happening was the herd bull branched off of his cows, came down, and Janus is like, there's about to be a rumble. right? He's coming to fight that other bull at the river bottom. So I kind of cut down a little bit and I cut over and I'm in the river and I hear clash, 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 clash. And I'm like, oh, they're fighting. Okay, this is my opportunity. And I basically didn't want to get above them, didn't want to get below them because the wind was blowing up and down. I just came straight at it, a side angle, straight into them. And I looked up and that herd bull was raking a tree at 61 yards. He wasn't fighting the other bull. He was raking a tree. So, I'm like, oh my God, it's been 7 days. I finally got my opportunity, right? Arrows knocked, ranged the tree 61 yards. It's all open. This is like one of the only little trees in that whole sage area. 61 yards. I'm like, I've been shooting out to 100. Like, I've got the 61 yards in the bag, no problem. And so I just need him to step out. So he ends up like annihilating this tree for literally 10 minutes. And he did it so long, Brian, it like calmed my nerves. Because in the beginning, I was like, 7 days. Oh my God, here's my opportunity, right? I'm all like, holy cow, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And then after 10 minutes later, I'm like, come on, would you step out already? You know what I mean? Let's go. Let's get the show on the road. So he steps out behind this tree. As soon as I see him turn to step out, I draw back. And I've got my 60, my bottom pin, my floater pin on him. And he steps out and he starts quartering away from me, walking towards his cows at a slow walk. And I'm just like full draw, like, oh my God, 60. He's probably at like 65 for now. Just put my pin up just a tad, aim for his shoulder, and he's going to walk right into my arrow, right? Let the shot break. Shot feels perfect. Bull does a mule kick, runs to his cows. I can't see because he crested over that spine. And right away I called Janus. I was like, Janus, I just shot him. He's like, what? No way, no way. So he's glassing up that face that I can't see. He's like, I see the bull. He's like, oh, I see your arrow. He's like, oh, it looks like you hit him a little forward. I'm like, oh my God, no way. Are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, you hit him forward. I'm like, oh my God, just like, just depleted, right? And basically what happened was I led my arrow by aiming at his shoulder, thinking he was going to walk into it. I hit him right in the shoulder, right where I was aiming. And so when I went back to base camp later on that afternoon or later on that evening, and the first thing out of my other friend's mouth was like, why didn't you stop him? And I was like, I didn't even think to stop that bull. If I would have stopped that bull would have been dead. If I would have like done a bleep, a meep, rap, reap, whatever, that bull would have stopped, looked back at me, arrows coming, you know what I mean? Because it was perfect height. It was just a little forward. I hit him in the shoulder blade. Basically mosquito bit his ass because Janus said the arrow popped right out. And then we watched that bull run in the open sage for miles, rutting his cows. You know what I mean? He was completely fine. But I just basically mosquito bit his ass right in his shoulder blade with my arrow. And I went up there, looked at the blood, and it was literally like a little speck of blood in the snow, like every couple of steps. You know what I mean? Just very, very minute. And so that made me feel better that, you know what I mean, he was going to live and he was fine. But to not even think to stop him, I don't know what was going through my head. I was so caught up in the moment. My pin was steady, was on him. I was like, I'm just going to lead him just a little tiny bit, and he's going to walk right into my arrow, and it's going to be perfect. And I ended up hitting him right where I was aiming. Just brutal, bro.
Oh, dude, heartbreaker. Oh, man.
Dude. So learned a valuable lesson, man. And you learn these lessons by these mistakes. Like and I remember when we were in the breaks and I told you, should I have stopped that bull? Remember when he passed me at 35 yards and you're like, yeah, he should have stopped him, but I didn't. I'm just not used to stopping animals, I guess, because we hunt axis so much. And if you stop them, it's like those things are gone, So, but yeah. So of course, every day after that, I had a reed in my mouth just in case I needed to stop. stop a bull. But I could have yelled at the thing. He probably would have stopped and looked back. You know,
Totally. Well,
just a
yeah, they're
huge,
just different species, right? It's like you stop those axis and they're on such high alert that then they jump your string. And so
right.
you hardly ever want to stop them on purpose because they're so jumpy. But those elk are a different species where when you stop them, they wait on the arrow. And especially like it doesn't work to stop them once they're spooked or trying to walk away. But if they're not spooked or don't know you're there and you give a little bleep or a little noise, yeah, that definitely works. And then send the arrow on their way. But yeah, that's the tough thing, man, is all these lessons are learned the hard way through heartache and heartburn. Man, that's how you learn and how you get better. And it's like all these skills, these bow hunting skills, they correlate to different species, but all these different species have a little bit different tendencies that you have to get used to in hunting it. Not that, you're a well-versed, experienced elk hunter, but yeah, sometimes those nuances will get, and they get all of us. And that shoulder is just so tough to get through on a bull elk, it just doesn't get through there and it doesn't hurt them, which is, like you say, I've seen him hit the shoulder and go right back to rutting like it didn't even hurt him at all, which sounds like it was the case for your bull as well. So it's good to know that, he wasn't hitting the guts and not something that died or you feel responsible about there. But yeah, man, that's a heartbreaker. Probably a real nice 6 too, huh?
Yeah, he wasn't like a giant by any means, but he was a decent 6. Yeah,
Yeah.
Not to put like numbers on bulls, but you get kind of a picture of what he was like. Anything for me, a decent 6 is what I'm after. Yeah, I mean, he was probably a 320 bull or so, something like that.
It's a great bull. Yeah,
Yeah.
you passed quite a few 5s and satellites while you were on the trip?
Yeah, I did. This one time I hiked way back into this basin by myself. I was a few miles back and there was some good wallows back in there. And I was talking to Janus on the phone. I'm like, man, I hear the wimpiest bugle down here. It's got to be a guy, right? Has to be a dude. Like, it's right above these wallows that we actually ran into some guys back in there some days prior. And sure enough, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wrap the backside of this basin so I can glass into this broken timber and see if I can pick up this dude bugling. So sure enough, I wrap the backside of the basin. I glass up this broken timber. And what do you know? It's a small 6. I'm just like, kidding me. He had the wimpiest bugle I ever heard. Like, it was horrible sounding. And it ended up being a small 6x. Yeah, in the beginning, definitely, I was just out to have a good time. And if the shot presented itself on a good bull, I'd take it, but definitely wasn't out to shoot anything on the smaller end. So what ended up happening was, that whole grouse scenario with Janus was like literally day 10, the evening of day 10. The next morning we're packing up base camp and we're taking off. And then we fly out the very next day. Well, that next morning I was like, it was only about a mile away from base to where, Janus had that opportunity on that good bull. I was like, he was going to sleep in. He was pretty defeated already. He had a few really good opportunities that he basically called it quits already. He was good. You know what I mean? He was content with the opportunities he had. I was like, I'm going to go back here this one last morning for a couple hours. The hunt usually only lasts till about 8:00 and the wind gets all squirrely and, I'll come back. So I took off an hour before light, made my way up into that area that James got on that good 6 with that whole grouse blowing up on him. And I basically made my way up there and I was trying to listen for bugles and I didn't hear much. And it was about an hour and a half after light. And I look up and I see this tan elk body about 300 feet above me on this bench come out. And I was like, oh, there's an elk right there. Okay. Put my binos up. I was like, oh, it's a raghorn. Well, we ended up seeing this group of like 4 raghorns throughout the hunt a few days prior. We knew they were in the area and we knew there was actually one decent bull with these raghorns. So there's like 3 raghorns and then this one bull was kind of like a 6x5. He was a decent bull, nothing like that big or anything, but a decent bull. So I'm looking at these raghorns feed out 300 yards above me. And I basically was like, I'm not even like a mile from camp. And I knew the boys wanted some elk meat, right? So a lot of things were going through my head. So I ended up climbing this 300-foot sage hill and crested up to the top, looking into this bench. And there was the other 3 other raghorns. So there's 4 raghorns total. And then I seen the one that was the bigger one. I was like, wow, he's actually a decent bull. I was like, let me see how this goes, So I just played the cool and calm game. I was like, no big deal, if I shot him or not. Let's just see how it plays out. He lets me get up to 25 yards on him. So I'm 25 yards on him. The other 3 bulls kind of fed off, and he's kind of behind a tree. And I feel like he senses something's up. And he literally so I got my phone out and I'm videoing him behind this tree for literally like 6 or 7 minutes. And he's kind of he's looking at my beanie, right? I swear he's looking at my head and my beanie, because that's the only thing he can see, because I'm on the down slope of the hill and he's up on the bench 25 yards away. And I just stay frozen and I'm just filming him video, and you can see him kind of look, and he's like, man, grass kind of tastes good, but God, I feel like there's a hunter right there. Well, I don't know. This grass looks pretty delicious. He ends up going down, he's eating a little bit, and then he took a few steps out from that tree. I'm like, well, if he lets me get the full draw, I'm just going to take my time with this, and I get the full draw, and I settle my pin on him. Of course, top pin shot. He's at 25 yards, and he's slightly quartering away, and I'm like, you know what? I love elk meat too much to let this bull pass. And I ended up smoking him, and double lunged him, and he ran 20 yards and got the phone back out, videoed him as he stood there and toppled over. And a lot of things went through my head, man. It was like, I wasn't really going to shoot a smaller bull, didn't have any intentions. But then, a couple guys at camp really wanted some elk meat, and I love elk meat too. You know what I mean? And the other thing was, we were pretty close to base camp. So all these thoughts went through my head. I had my younger boy, Amari, in my head about, Daddy, I hope you get one. I hope you get one. Every day I'd call him at home. He's like, did you get one yet? Did you get one? So all that stuff in my head, I was just like, you know what? This bull lets me come full draw and has no idea, and I can just settle that pin perfectly. I'm going to shoot this bull. And it just all came together, and the bull went 20 yards and piled up. And I called Janus and Eric up. I was like, Janus, I just shot a smaller bull. And he's like, what? He's like, are you serious? Because it was his last morning. He's like, where are you? And I sent him a pin. He's like, oh, you're way up there. I'm like, I'm not that far up here. I'm only like a mile away, if that. He's like, okay, no worries. You're not that far. So him and Eric, his brother-in-law, ended up coming up and meeting me up there. And it was an easy pack out. We deboned it and packed it out, all 3 of us, one time to base camp. And yeah, it was, and they were stoked. They were super stoked on the meat. So it was just meant to be.
Oh, good for you, dude. Congratulations. Yeah, you don't got to feel bad about killing an elk.
Yeah.
Especially a day like that. It's like, we love to hunt them too much as well, So, you held out till the very last day on the bull you wanted. And then there's a bull up there that's bull, and you got your bow and arrow, and you're in the States. It's like, nothing wrong with that. Shoot that thing a mile from camp, pack them out, have elk meat. Oh, you're stoked, dude. Good work. And it feels so good to have like quality execution, make a great shot, go 20 yards, tip over, like just to have that all go down on the last day, like that caps the trip as well, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, it did feel like it did cap the trip for sure. It felt good hiking that meat out, and that everybody's gonna get some elk meat throughout the year. For
sure. Oh, that elk meat eats so good too. And I know you had buddies from Alaska there, so they probably don't get much for elk meat, and so to be able to share it with those guys, man, it's It's not quite ending with your giant 6-point, but dude, it's as good as you can get. Like it's as close to a perfect ending as you can get to arrow a bull on the last.
Yeah. It was just whether there was an elk shot or not, it was just a phenomenal trip. Everybody had a blast. Everybody was getting opportunities. I mean, it couldn't have been better of a trip. It literally was the best elk hunt I've ever been on. And it wasn't even due to shooting a big bull or anybody shooting a big bull by any means. It was just everything else that went into it that made it the best elk hunt I've ever been on. Yeah.
Oh, that's killer, man. Action just makes it, doesn't it? When you're getting into them and chasing them and making plays and trying to theorize, like you're totally engaged in the hunt, makes for the funnest hunt.
Yeah. And coming back to camp and talking with the boys and how their hunt went every day that we weren't spiked out. It's just fun to me, hearing everybody's stories and all the close calls and laughing and, just a riot. It was just such a good time. Yeah. It really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, I'm in for next year. Yeah. We'll have to figure out where we're going to go or what we're going to do. Yeah, I definitely missed out not being able to hunt elk with you. So we got to get together and do it again. But good going on that bull, dude. I'm glad you had such a great elk hunt. And we continue to learn each and every year, all of us, it's the way it is. And elk meet for another year for you. So it's a success, and we'll start planning on the following year.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I like sharing my failures. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to hold back from saying, hey, I wounded a boar. Like, I'm going to express what happened to me. And if that helps somebody else in the field, stop a bull when they need to stop them and smoke it rather than take a shot while he's on a walk or whatever. I mean, it's just lesson learned, and it definitely will not happen to me again. Because the one at the breaks I ended up getting, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But this one, I know for sure I would have got if I would have stopped them. So if that can help somebody else down the line not make the same mistake that I did, then it's all worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one in the breaks you shot walking, you'd mentioned that at 35 yards he was walking and hit him perfect and killed him, and so it worked out. And then you had this one. Dude, I think it's beautiful. I think like we have to share our failures because there's like it's a reality of elk hunting is those elk are so dang tough and they take such a perfect shot. And the reality is it's part of bow hunting. And if we never share those failures or if we never share those shortcomings, the guys that do have them, feel like they're the only ones or feel like that these good hunters, it never happens to them or they never make any mistakes, when the reality is that we all make mistakes, and we all make these judgment calls, and we're chasing these animals so hard to try to get a good quality arrow in them. And there's just so many variables that it doesn't always happen that way. And sometimes it's a crummy story. And I think it's important to share that. And I think it's like, I think it's like, it's really good of you to share that experience, like on the podcast, and be able to tell guys that, and then, to come away and to get it right and make perfect execution on another bull and make it happen. Like it worked out and we learned from that and we become better. But dude, I think it's I just think it's great that you share your failures as well. And I try to do the same, man. When I'm failing, I try to share it with guys. And if I mess up or if I make a bad shot, it's the same. I want to share it so guys can learn from it. And like you said, if one guy learns from it and stops that bull before he shoots or tries to take him on the walk, or whether it's like, learning from some of my mistakes and waiting, not shooting through limbs or waiting for the right angle or whatever the case is, like, man, that stuff happens to us. So, man, I just appreciate your like honesty and forthcoming like on the podcast, because I do think it really helps guys out.
Right on. That's awesome, man. And congrats on your elk, Brian. Yeah, it was a good job.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, man. Yeah, you're the man. It's really fun to catch up to you. So yeah, keep in touch and we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good, buddy. Thank you.